The room was dimly lit, with shadows dancing on the walls as the moonlight streamed through the partially drawn curtains. Jaden lay in his bed, his heart racing, his breath quickening. The comforting hum of the night felt distant as he found himself trapped in a vivid nightmare. In this dream, he wandered through a dark, twisted forest filled with gnarled trees that seemed to whisper secrets in a language he couldn't understand. The air was thick with tension, and every sound was amplified: a rustle of leaves, a distant howl, the echo of his own footsteps. Suddenly he heard laughter, a chilling sound that sent shivers down his spine. "Who's there?" Jaden called out, his voice trembling. The laughter grew louder, morphing into haunting echoes that circled around him. Out of the shadows emerged figures clad in flowing cloaks, their faces obscured by dark hoods. Jaden could barely make out their features, but he recognized the fangs peeking from their lips, sharp and glistening under the moonlight. "Welcome, little one of the figures hissed, stepping closer. "We've been waiting for you." Jaden turned to run, his heart pounding in his chest. He sprinted through the forest, branches scratching at his arms, but the laughter followed him, taunting and relentless. "You can't escape," another voice whispered, "for you are one of us." In a moment of desperation, he remembered his grandmother's tales, stories of ancestral spirits and their connection to their lineage. "You're just stories," he shouted into the night, trying to summon the courage he felt in the daylight. "You have no power over me." The figures paused, their laughter faltering. Jaden felt a surge of confidence as he shouted, "I am brave. I am not afraid of you." Suddenly, the ground trembled, and the forest began to dissolve around him, fading into a swirl of colors. He awoke with a jolt, drenched in sweat, the remnants of the nightmare clinging to him like a heavy fog. The echoes of their laughter still rang in his ears, haunting him. "Jaden, are you okay?" Maria called from the other room, her voice laced with concern. "I'm fine, Mom," he replied, though his voice wavered. He sat up in bed, taking deep breaths to steady himself, the vivid images of the night still lingering in his mind. Later that morning, as sunlight poured into his room, Jaden couldn't shake the feeling that the nightmare was a warning. He made a mental note to talk to his grandmother later, seeking comfort in her wisdom about the stories of their ancestors. Perhaps she could help him understand what his dream meant and why it felt so real. As the sun reached its zenith, Maria entered Jaden's room, her arms laden with packages. "Look what I brought you," she said, her voice brightening the dim remnants of Jaden's nightmare.
Curiosity piqued, Jaden jumped up. "Is it my boxing costume?"
"Of course. I knew you were excited about it," she said, setting the box down on his bed. Jaden eagerly tore into the packaging, revealing a vibrant red boxing costume adorned with golden stripes, a reflection of his determination to become a martial artist. "It's amazing," Jaden exclaimed, holding the costume up against his chest. But as he admired it, a shadow of doubt flickered across his face. "But Mom, what if I get hurt?" Maria noticed the hesitation in his eyes and sat down beside him. "You know, it's not just about looking tough. Boxing can be dangerous, Jaden. It's my job to keep you safe." "Mom, I get that, but I'm almost 13. I want to learn how to fight. I want to be strong." His frustration bubbled over as he struggled against the cultural expectations placed on him. "Just because we come from a background where people look at us differently doesn't mean I have to be afraid of everything." Maria's expression softened, but her resolve remained firm. "I just don't want you to get hurt. It's a rough world out there, and you need to be careful."
Jaden stood up, pacing his room. "It's not fair. You treat me like a little kid. Everyone else gets to try things, but I'm stuck here. I want to learn martial arts because I want to protect myself, especially after those stories Grandma tells us about our ancestors."
"Stories?" Maria raised an eyebrow. "What stories?" "The ones about our family fighting against the odds, overcoming challenges, and being strong. If they could do it, why can't I?" Jaden's voice was charged with emotion as he turned to face his mother. Maria sighed, knowing how important these discussions were for her son. "Jaden, I understand where you're coming from, but you have to realize that the world is different now. There are real dangers out there. It's not just about strength, it's about wisdom too." Then help me learn. Show me how to be wise, Jaden pleaded, his eyes shining with determination. I want to be more than just a scared kid. I want to make a difference. Maria looked into Jaden's eyes and saw the passion burning within him. Okay, how about this? We can start with some self-defense classes together. I'll be right there with you, and we can learn the techniques safely. Jaden's face lit up. Really? You'd do that?
Of course. But you have to promise to be careful and listen to what the instructors say. I don't want to see you get hurt, she insisted, her voice firm but loving.
I promise. And maybe I can even use my boxing skills to help protect people in our community, Jaden exclaimed, feeling a sense of purpose surging within him. As they talked, the shadows of Jaden's nightmare began to fade, replaced by a new resolve. With the support of his mother, he felt ready to confront whatever fears lay ahead both in the ring and in the world outside. Now let's get you into that costume and see how it fits, Maria said, standing up and playfully tugging at Jaden's arm. Okay, but first I need to practice my punches. I have to be ready for the vampires, he joked, his spirits lifted. Maria laughed, the tension between them easing as they shared this light-hearted moment. As Jaden put on his boxing costume, he felt a sense of strength, both in the fabric against his skin and in the unwavering support of his mother. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united by love and courage. The late afternoon sun poured through Jaden's bedroom window, casting flickering shadows that danced across his walls. He sat cross-legged on the floor, headset on, immersed in a vibrant, culturally themed video game titled Vampire Nightfall. The game's rich narrative drew heavily from folklore, intertwining traditional tales of vampire legends with modern twists. Jaden's character, a fearless hero named Tzitzimitl, was on a mission to thwart a vampire uprising that threatened his virtual city. As he navigated the screen, the characters around him began to discuss a nefarious plan, a coordinated attack on Halloween night, where vampires would rise and take control. The words hung in the air, sparking a chill in Jaden's spine. We need to deploy the shadow spell at midnight, one character said, her voice dripping with urgency. If we don't, the humans won't stand a chance. The moment his avatar leaped from the screen to dodge a fireball, Jaden removed his headset, breathless and wide-eyed. Mom, he yelled, rushing down the hall. You won't believe what I just heard. The vampires, they're planning something huge for Halloween. Maria, in the kitchen, stirred a pot of beans, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern. Jaden, sweetie, it's just a game. You know that, right? Vampires aren't real. But Mom, Jaden insisted, his voice trembling with excitement and fear. It felt so real. They were talking about a bomb. They're going to attack our neighborhood. Maria sighed, her brow furrowing. Jaden, I understand you love your games, but you can't let them blur the lines between reality and fantasy. You're letting this get to your head. She turned back to her cooking, but Jaden could see her dismissiveness cut deep. You never listen. I know what I heard. Jaden's frustration bubbled over. What if it is real? What if I'm the only one who can stop them? Jaden, she said, her voice firm yet gentle, you're just a kid. You're letting a video game give you nightmares. It's not worth it. He clenched his fists, fighting back tears. You don't get it. This is serious. I'm telling you, they're going to come for us. The room felt charged, the tension palpable, as Jaden stormed back to his room, slamming the door. Inside, he plopped onto his bed, staring at the ceiling. The colors from the game swirled in his mind, doubts and fears tangled together. Was he overreacting, or was there a real threat looming? He resolved to investigate further, convinced that the fate of his community rested on his shoulders. Just then, his phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. Did you see the news? People dressed as vampires were spotted near the plaza. Jaden's heart raced. Could it be true? He grabbed his headset, determined to dive back into the game, but this time with a different purpose. He needed to find evidence, something that could prove he wasn't just a scared kid playing games. The next day, the classroom buzzed with excitement as students shuffled in, their eyes wide with anticipation. It was career day, and Jaden could feel a mix of anxiety and hope swirling inside him. Detective Alonso Rivera, a figure Jayden admired, was set to speak. The air was electric with the potential for inspiration. Detective Rivera entered the room, a commanding presence with a warm smile. His Hispanic heritage shone through as he spoke, effortlessly connecting with the students. Good morning, everyone. I'm Detective Rivera, and I've been with the police force for over 20 years, protecting our diverse community and ensuring everyone feels safe. Jayden sat at the front, leaning forward, his palms sweaty. This was his chance. Rivera spoke passionately about his experiences, sharing stories that resonated deeply with the kids. In our neighborhoods, we face challenges every day: gang violence, crime, and sometimes fear. But every day, we also have the power to make a difference. As the detective recounted a tale about apprehending a gang that had been preying on local businesses, Jayden's heart raced. The parallels to his own concerns about vampires and the potential danger felt too close to ignore. He raised his hand, voice shaking but determined. Detective Rivera, do you think it's possible for someone to act on a threat like that? I mean, in real life? The detective's eyes twinkled with understanding. Absolutely, Jayden. Sometimes what we see in movies or games can reflect real issues. It's essential to recognize when something feels off and report it. That's how we protect our community. Jayden's mind raced. This was exactly what he wanted to do. What if someone believes they're a hero, but they're just a kid? Can they still make a difference? Detective Rivera paused, nodding thoughtfully. Every hero starts as someone who cares. It's about recognizing your strengths and knowing when to ask for help. Your courage to speak up is already a step in the right direction. Inspired, Jayden's heart swelled with newfound confidence. I want to help. I want to be like you. Can I shadow you someday? The words spilled out before he could think. The room went quiet, and Jayden felt the weight of everyone's gaze. He could almost hear the wheels turning in Rivera's head. It takes commitment and courage, Jayden. But yes, I'd be happy to discuss it with your mother if she's on board. Jayden's face lit up, hope igniting within him. He could already picture himself in a uniform, protecting his community, just like Detective Rivera. Thank you. I promise I'll show her I'm ready. After the presentation, as the students filed out, Jayden felt empowered. He approached Rivera, excitement bubbling in his chest. Detective, I overheard something important. It was about vampires. And a plot. Rivera raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Vampires, huh? Those myths can sometimes represent real fears in our communities. You're not the first to mention threats wrapped in stories. Jayden shared his experience from the game, describing how he felt connected to the storyline and the real-life implications of what he had overheard. Rivera listened intently, nodding as Jayden spoke. You've got a keen sense for these things, Jayden. Just remember, whether it's a video game or real life, being aware and speaking up is critical. Rivera's words felt like a beacon of hope, guiding Jayden toward his destiny. As Jayden left school that day, he felt lighter. The detective's words echoed in his mind, fueling his determination. He knew he had to take action. If the vampires were plotting something real, he wouldn't stand idly by. He texted Ethan on the way home, we need to investigate. This is bigger than just a game. Jayden realized that his fear was transforming into courage. Inspired by Detective Rivera and emboldened by his passion for justice, he would uncover the truth behind the vampire's sinister plans, proving that even a kid could be a hero. As Jayden stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his boxing costume, he couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than just fabric and stitching. It was a symbol of his desire to prove himself. His reflection showed a determined young boy, one who had faced fears and nightmares about vampires, yet still yearned to fight for what he believed was right. He took a deep breath, his heart pounding with both excitement and trepidation. Mom, I want to train in martial arts, Jayden called out, trying to keep the hope in his voice steady. He glanced at the framed photos on the wall, images of family gatherings filled with laughter and warmth. Yet there was a barrier that seemed to grow thicker every day, one that he could sense, but could not see. Maria entered the room, her brow furrowed. Jayden, we've talked about this. You're still too small, and it can be dangerous. You don't understand how the world sees kids like us. But I do understand. I see it every day. Jaden's voice rose, filled with frustration. You treat me like I'm a child. Just because I'm not tall enough doesn't mean I can't defend myself or learn to be strong. You can't keep me sheltered forever. Maria sighed, her expression softening but her resolve firm. I just want to keep you safe. You know how people can be. They look at us and see stereotypes, not the truth of who we are. Jaden clenched his fists, trying to suppress the anger bubbling within him. You think I can't handle it just because of the color of my skin? I want to learn from Detective Rivera. He understands what it's like to be in our shoes, and he believes in me. You're talking about a man who faces danger every day. Jaden. I can't bear the thought of you getting hurt, Maria said, her voice trembling with worry. What if I want to help people like him? Jaden shot back, the fire in his eyes intensifying. If I stay here, I'm just going to keep having nightmares. I need to face my fears. I need to train. There was a long silence as Maria processed his words. Jaden took the moment to push forward, his tone earnest. Look, I know you care about me, but I need you to trust me. I can handle it. I promise I won't let you down. It's not just about fighting, it's about standing up for who we are. Maria hesitated, her heart torn. Finally, she reached out, placing her hand on his shoulder. I want to believe in you, Jaden. But you have to show me you're responsible enough for this. Can you do that? Jaden nodded, determination etching deeper lines into his face. I will. I'll prove to you that I can be strong. As Maria stepped out of the room, Jaden felt a rush of empowerment. The doubts that plagued him began to fade, replaced with a sense of purpose. He was ready to take charge of his life and push against the barriers placed before him. He could already envision the training, the strength he would gain, and the respect he would earn not just from his mother but from himself. The next day, Jaden met Ethan at their favorite spot, a small park surrounded by trees with thick trunks and twisting branches. The air was crisp, hinting at the approaching Halloween, and the atmosphere buzzed with excitement and a hint of foreboding. As Jaden approached, Ethan was already immersed in a conversation about the latest video game they had been playing. Jaden. You won't believe what I heard in the game last night, Ethan exclaimed, his voice filled with animated energy. The vampires were planning something huge for Halloween, like really big. Jaden's interest peaked, the earlier determination still fresh in his mind. What do you mean? Are they plotting to invade the town or something? Worse. They're planning to unleash chaos during the Halloween festival, Ethan said, his eyes wide. I overheard them talking about bombs and a hostage situation at the bank. They think it'll send a message, like a show of power or something. Jaden's heart raced as he absorbed the information. Do you think it's real? Like actually happening? I don't know, man, Ethan said, scratching his head. But it sounded serious. They kept saying things like, tonight's the night, and let's make sure they remember us. It felt way too real. Jaden paced back and forth, his mind racing. We have to do something. If they're planning this, it could really hurt people, especially our community. We can't just sit back and let it happen. Ethan looked skeptical but intrigued. But how? We're just kids. No one will believe us. Your mom doesn't even trust you enough to let you train. That's exactly why we need to take action, Jaden replied, determination setting his jaw. We can gather evidence, show people what's really going on. If we can find out where they're meeting, we can tell Detective Rivera. He'll take us seriously.
Ethan nodded, his excitement growing. Okay, but what if we get caught? They could think we're trying to interfere or something. Then we'll be smart about it, Jaden said, his voice low and confident. We'll plan everything out. We'll stick to the shadows and watch. They won't even know we're there.
All right, Ethan said, his adrenaline kicking in. Let's figure this out together. For our neighborhood. As they made their way to Jaden's house, the weight of their mission settled over them. They would not only be confronting a threat, but also challenging the very stereotypes that sought to diminish their identities. In that moment, Jaden felt a bond with Ethan, strengthened by a shared purpose. Later that night, They gathered their supplies, flashlights, notebooks, and snacks. Jaden looked at Ethan, a newfound seriousness etched on his face. This is more than just a game, Ethan. We're doing this for our families and our friends. We have to protect our community. Ethan grinned, the spark of adventure igniting his spirit. Let's make sure they remember us too, but for all the right reasons. As they ventured out into the night, cloaked by darkness and determination, Jaden felt a rush of courage. He wasn't just facing vampires, he was standing up against the fears and misconceptions that had tried to box him in. This Halloween, they would show that even in a world filled with myths and stereotypes, the truth was far more powerful than any nightmare. As the sun began to set on Halloween night, the atmosphere in the neighborhood was electric with excitement and anticipation. Costumed children roamed the streets, their laughter echoing amidst the vibrant decorations adorning the houses. However, Jaden sat at home, the glow of his gaming console illuminating his face, his heart racing not from the game, but from the nightmare he had experienced the night before. Jaden's living room, decorated with Halloween motifs, contrasting with the tension that builds as he listens to the police scanner. Jaden's voice broke through the background noise. I just can't shake this feeling, Maria. What if those vampires from the game are planning something real? I overheard them talking about a bomb. Maria, walking past with a bowl of candy, rolled her eyes, her protective instincts flaring. Jaden, it's just a video game. You need to focus on reality and not let your imagination run wild. Besides, you know how I feel about those stories. But Mom, I heard it on the police scanner, he insisted, turning his attention back to the screen. Just then, a voice crackled through the scanner. All units, we have a report of suspicious activity near the plaza. Possible bomb threat. Suspects described as dressed in vampire costumes. Jaden's eyes widened, his heart racing. This wasn't just a dream or a game anymore. I have to go, he declared, determination replacing his earlier fears. Where do you think you're going? You're not a police officer, Jaden, Maria shouted, but her words faded as he darted out of the house. Jaden races toward the plaza, fueled by adrenaline and the desire to protect his community. As Jaden approached the plaza, the festive atmosphere was overshadowed by the sight of flashing police lights and a growing crowd of onlookers. The air was thick with tension. The costumes of the children around him transformed from playful to ominous as he spotted a group of individuals dressed as vampires huddled near the bank entrance. The plaza, filled with Halloween decorations, now feels eerie as police cars line the street, and a crowd gathers, murmuring anxiously. Jaden's heart pounded as he overheard snippets of conversation from the crowd. They're holding hostages inside, one woman whispered. Why would they target a place like this? They want something, another replied. And they won't stop until they get it. Jaden slipped closer, feeling a mix of fear and resolve. What are you doing? Ethan whispered, appearing beside him, his face pale beneath his ghostly costume. I have to find out what they're planning, Jaden replied, the determination evident in his voice. Are you crazy? You can't just walk in there, Ethan exclaimed, grabbing Jaden's arm. I have to. If they're really vampires, they're just using Halloween as a cover. They could be preying on our neighborhood, Jaden argued. Before Ethan could respond, a loud bang echoed from the bank, and the crowd gasped in unison. The vampires had made their demands clear, and chaos erupted as people began to scatter. Suddenly, Jaden noticed a small group of people standing frozen in fear just inside the bank's glass doors. His heart dropped. Those were the hostages. They looked terrified, their eyes wide with panic. He spotted a familiar face among them, Mr. Garcia, the kind elderly man who owned the local bodega. Jaden's stomach churned. He couldn't just stand by and let this happen. Listen, we need a plan, Jaden said urgently, turning to Ethan. We have to help them. Ethan shook his head vehemently. We're just kids. What can we do? Jaden's voice dropped to a whisper, filled with urgency. We know this neighborhood better than they do. We can get in, gather intel, and warn the police. As the stakes rise, the boys huddle in a nearby alley, strategizing on how to alert the police without being caught by the vampires. Jaden's resolve solidifies as he thinks of the people in danger, especially Mr. Garcia. Okay, here's the plan. You stay here and keep an eye out. I'll sneak around the back and see if I can find a way to get in, Jaden whispered, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. Ethan looked at him, a mixture of admiration and fear in his eyes. You're really going to do this? Just be careful. Okay. I will. I promise, Jaden replied, squeezing Ethan's shoulder before darting toward the bank. Jaden entered the bank through a side door, holding his breath as he crept inside. The scene was chaos. The vampires, led by a tall figure with a dramatic cape, were shouting demands. Nobody moves. We want the money or else. He felt a chill run down his spine, the kind that came from seeing his worst fears come to life. But he steeled himself, reminding himself of his mission. As he moved stealthily, he overheard one of the vampires talking about a countdown. We have 30 minutes to get what we want, or this place goes up in flames. Jaden whispered to himself, I can't let this happen. I need to find the hostages. He spotted the group huddled in a corner, and among them he saw Mr. Garcia's worried face. Jaden couldn't let fear control him any longer. He had to act. As he approached the hostages, he noticed that one of the vampires was distracted, counting the money they'd already collected. Jaden took a deep breath, summoning all his courage. Hey, over here, he shouted, drawing the attention of the vampire. The room went silent, and all eyes turned to him. What do you want, little boy? The vampire sneered, a twisted smile spreading across his face. Jaden swallowed hard, adrenaline surging. I know what you're planning, and it's not going to work. You're not going to hurt anyone here. The vampire stepped forward, clearly taken aback by Jaden's bravado. And what do you think you can do about it? You're just a kid. Maybe. But I have something you don't. Courage, Jaden shot back, surprising even himself with his confidence. Just then, the police burst in, led by Detective Rivera. Everyone stay back, he shouted, assessing the situation. Jaden's eyes locked onto Detective Rivera, and he shouted, they're planning to blow the bank up. With that, chaos erupted as the police moved in, and the vampires scrambled, realizing their cover was blown. Jaden watched as Detective Rivera and Officer Kim Lee worked together, utilizing their training to subdue the gang members. When the dust settled, the hostages were freed, and the vampires were apprehended. The air was thick with relief and gratitude. Jaden's heart swelled with pride as Mr. Garcia approached him, tears in his eyes. You were incredibly brave, Jaden. Thank you for saving us. Maria arrived, fear etched on her face, but it quickly melted into pride when she saw her son. I was so worried. But you're a hero. Mom, I just did what anyone would do, Jaden replied, humility shining through. Detective Rivera placed a hand on Jaden's shoulder, recognition in his eyes. You showed real courage today, kid. Never underestimate your ability to make a difference. As Jaden looked around at his community, the fear from earlier faded. He felt empowered, knowing he had protected those he cared about. This Halloween had turned into a lesson of bravery, not just for him but for everyone around him. Jaden cleverly deduces the bomb's disarm code based on a culturally significant conversation about family birthdays, showcasing his intelligence and bravery despite his mother's concerns. The situation resolves without casualties, and Jaden is celebrated as a hero in his community, challenging stereotypes about young boys of color and shifting his mother's perception of his capabilities. The story ends with a heartfelt exchange between Jaden and Maria, where she expresses pride in him, acknowledging his growth and bravery, while reflecting on the cultural values that shape them.